Hi, this is Scott from Chino Basin Water Conservation District here in the Waterwise Community Center's park with what's currently my very favorite California native sage ground cover cultivar. This is a large-scale planting of Mrs. Beard sage or Salvia Mrs. Beard. There's a lot of things I love about Mrs. Beard sage. The most obvious is this huge, beautiful, light purple floral display that we get through the spring all the way into early summer in many years. It just flowers and flowers and flowers and is adored by pollinators. It smells great, and it also has this really lovely, somewhat darker foliage compared to a lot of the California native sages. And part of that is because it's a hybrid between Salvia sonomensis, which is a sage that's a creeper from a little bit farther north than where we are here in Southern California, and our local black sage, Salvia mellifera. It combines many of the great qualities of the two of those and makes an absolutely lovely, larger scale ground cover. This massing effect of the Mrs. Beard sage was achieved by planting these in groups of 3, about 7 feet apart. You'll often read from Mrs. Beard sage that it's going to be 4 to maybe 6 feet wide, but what we find in the inland heat here in the Inland Empire area is that it's going to be 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 feet wide if it's not pruned for size every year. And that's great as long as we make sure we give it adequate space. It can be a very low maintenance plant with just a bit of cleanup once a year in the fall. Because it's adjacent to our pathway area, we also a few times a year will come back and do just a little edge trimming along the pathway, which it takes very well, making this a great ground cover for the edges of landscape areas planted 4, maybe 5 feet away from the edge, along sidewalks or in wider parkway spaces. If you're in inland Southern California, you have a couple of options about how to successfully site and irrigate Mrs. Beard sage in your garden. Because one of the parents of this hybrid comes from a little bit farther north in California, if you really want to make sure you're keeping the foliage as lush as possible year-round, it's going to be best to plant Mrs. Beard sage in a place that's either partial, maybe dappled shade from a tall tree canopy, or somewhere that gets morning sun but afternoon shade during the hottest parts of the year. Or it can be perfectly happy growing in full sun like we have it here in our park. However, in the heat of summer, the foliage will look a little bit wilty. It'll just be part of the natural semi-dormancy cycle that this plant will go through. And then as soon as things cool off in fall, it's going to be perky again, which is totally natural, totally healthy for the plant, just its natural drought adaptation. In addition to that, you can impact how dormant this plant goes by choosing your watering situation carefully. Here we water this area about once every 3 weeks in the summer, in full sun, in Montclair, and so this plant does go pretty dormant in the summer. However, if we watered it every other week, maybe grouped with plants that want a little bit higher water or more of a Mediterranean garden situation, it would stay a little bit perkier. So totally up to you how you want to site it, how you want to irrigate it, depending on whether you're preferring it to stay perky year-round or embracing more of the natural cycle to allow it to go through its summer dormant phase. And to finish up this profile, I wanted to show you the flowers up close. So lovely. And Mrs. Beard sage, like all of the California native sages, also make wonderful cut flowers, so you don't only need to enjoy it in the garden, you can cut the blooms and bring them into the house as well. For more information about Mrs. Beard sage, as well as many, many more of our favorite plants for Southern California gardens, including their maintenance and care information, be sure to check our Waterwise Garden Planner website with the link in the description below.